everybody and welcome to Tabia's Knitting. In today's video I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can think when you want to knit your very first sweater. For me, I really love knitting sweaters, and often when I knit socks or a shawl or something, it doesn't even feel like I'm knitting something. For me, sometimes it doesn't feel like it really counts, so I'm very into the sweaters and the cardigans. So I know that a lot of people are kind of intimidated when they want to knit their first sweater, but I don't really think it's that hard at all. So I thought that I would give you some tips on what you can think about if you want to get started, so that you can also start making your own garments. My first tip is don't get intimidated. Just don't, because it's so unnecessary. A sweater, there are a lot of different constructions how you can knit a sweater, but the basic skills that you need to know is to cast on and to bind off, to do increases and to do decreases. So it's simple as that. And you need more yarn than you need for a sock or for a glove or something, but it's really not that hard. When I got into knitting for real, kind of, I started to read a lot of blogs and books, and I tried to gather as much information as I could. And sometimes it feels like the more information I got, the more intimidated I got, or the more information I got, the more I knew that how I could do wrong and what I'm not supposed to do and those kind of things. So my recommendation would really be to don't do it. It's like, just think, I can do this, and I know you can. So if you do some basic steps, then everything will be fine, I can guarantee you. So as I said, that's the first, it's the mindset that you need. Don't be intimidated, you will be fine, it will be a great sweater and you can do it. My second tip is to learn a little bit about material. The very first sweater that I made was a pattern called Basic Round Yoke Unisex Sweater by Hannah Fettig. The original design is designed for Queens & Co.'s Owl, which is a 50% wool, 50% alpaca yarn. It's woolen spun, which means that it's quite fluffy and airy and has a little bit of a halo to it. I went to my local yarn store and told the lady that this is the sweater that I wanted to knit, and then the first question I got was what kind of material I wanted to knit it in. And I was like, material? I wasn't really aware that there are different materials to knit with, honestly, and I had no idea what to answer. So I ended up buying a chain spun cotton yarn, which is totally different from the yarn that is used in the sweater. The cotton yarn was quite thick and heavy, didn't have any halo at all, and wasn't bouncy either. So the sweater that I made was quite okay actually, but I saw the picture of the design, and in my mind I wanted the sweater to look like on the picture. When my sweater turned out quite differently, I was a little bit disappointed. So my recommendation would be to think a little bit about, when do you want to wear this sweater? Do you want it to be a summer or winter garment? Do you want it to be very warm, or shall it be more of a chic sweater or a cardigan? Or think a little bit about what do you want from the garment, so that you can choose the right yarn for it. I will put some links down below in the description box, so you can read a little more about the different fibers and their characteristics and their properties and what they are good for and what they maybe shouldn't be used for. And I also want to give you a book recommendation. There is a book called The Knitter's Book of Yarn by Claire Parks, which I actually haven't read yet, but I really want to, and I heard many good things about it. And it's about, as the name says, it's about yarn and about different materials and different fibers. And I think, or what I hope that I can really learn from it, is how to better choose the right yarn for the right garment. Another thing that is important to think about in terms of material is to choose a yarn that you really like. You're knitting a sweater in it after all, so you will work for it for a longer time, and hopefully you can wear this sweater for a longer time as well. So choose something that you really like and you know you would want to work with. Also, it depends on what kind of yarn you like, of course, and what kind of type you are. Maybe a fingering weight yarn or very thin yarn is not the best way to go for the first sweater, because it will take a really long time. But if you're up for that, no worries, you will be fine. My third tip is to knit a gauge swatch. So that's something that kind of divides the knitting world. All of the designers and a lot of people say that you have to do it, it's a must, and then there are people that don't like it and think that the swatch never really behaves like the sweater does afterwards. I'm more in this part. I think, or for me, it's really helpful if I know my gauge before I start, so that I can do some calculations or some modifications. So what gauge basically means is how many rows and stitches you have on a 10 to 10 centimeter square. So you basically just test out the yarn before you start knitting your garment. Another thing that I really like with it, that you can try out the yarn and that you can play around a little bit, and it doesn't actually really matter. And you can see how the yarn behaves, if you like it or not, and what kind of needle you want to use for it, and so on. So my recommendation would be knit a swatch, and then you can see if you match the patterns gauge, and if you do, you're ready to go. If not, maybe you want to use another needle, or if you really like the fabric that you're creating, you could also try and do some recalculations or knit a different size, so that you would end up in a garment that you would like. So this was the last tip that I had for you today. I hope that this can be helpful when you want to knit your first sweater but don't really know how to get started. It will be fine, no worries. I also thought that in my next video I will give you some pattern recommendations for a first sweater. If you are interested in the first sweater or the first cardigan, I have to say the first cardigan I made, I will put a link to my last video here. Subscribe if you want to be updated with the videos I upload. Leave me a comment or a like, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye bye!